the game has always been an important part of our judiciary. And as all things in our culture, it's all connected. So it's also, once again, a part of the concept of health for our people, if it's judicial in nature. The great thing about our culture is that all of that stuff was one thing, you know. Whereas now it's classified as athletics or sports or a stickball game, and then you have ceremonies and you have this kind of, and it's all very clearly categorized into its own little thing, and that's something that and that's not the way that we looked at it, you know. All of those things were connected to one another. All of them were. Every ceremony was connected to that. The Eagle Dance was connected to the stickball games. Everything we did was, and hence the stickball game was vis-a-vis connected to everything. It's the way in which we thought. It was part of our cosmology. It was truly a part of the way of our being. That is what we were.
After that, it was played as a social game, and today, you know, it is played for demonstration, but it's also played because guys like to play the game. Jerry Wolf, a tribal elder in Cherokee, talks about how, you know, you couldn't be considered a man unless you were involved in a stickball game. You know, that in his day growing up, which would have been in the 20s and 30s, that was a measure of a man. Was he a good ball player?
So it's a very important part of our lives. It's a very important part of what we identify with, and we like it. You know, it's a source of great pride and stuff, and it's done not quite in the ways that it used to be done a long time ago, but certainly it's still going on.
I'm a driver. I've been asked and have drove some of the games at Snowbird. The drivers are the referees. Each team has a driver. The game is played, and do you want a kind of an overview of the game? Okay. Is 12 on 12. The men line up. The driver's job is to, at the beginning of the game, when they line up, after the challenges have been issued and they meet in the middle of the field, to set the teams, to set man on man, as that is. If a man gets hurt and is unable to continue, then his respective opponent has to step out of the game to keep it even. The game's played to 12 points. The goal of the game was, instead of throwing a ball into the net or any of that, there will be two posts on either end of the field. Each has two tree branches sticking up, and it's to run around that goal, to run around one of those branches, and that's a point.
In earlier times, they would sequester themselves off for at least 2 weeks. So these men wouldn't see anybody or talk to anybody, and were sequestered together someplace in order to purify themselves and prepare for the game and stuff. And they would walk there, and they might be 4, 5, 6 miles away, someplace hidden in the mountains, or maybe 10 miles away, and they would walk all the way to the game then. Now they just have somebody to issue the challenge call who either wants to do it or has the loudest voice. But they were talking about back in the early days, there were specific men who did that, you know, on those teams. And they were picked because of their voice. And to hear those voices, to hear that one voice making that call would just run chills up your back and stuff like, because it was an actual challenge call and stuff, and it was, you know, and you knew what was coming and stuff, and you knew they weren't going to back down, and they were coming, you know, and stuff. It just really created this great feeling. You know? In this day and time, they approach each other from each end of the field, so it's a very short thing. But in those days, and I've heard stories of people saying that they could hear those men coming from half a mile away, you could hear them, and stuff. And as the teams got closer to the field, by the time they got actually on the field, and by the time they came into sight, even the people who were watching were so into it by then, by these challenge calls, that sometimes fights would break out right there and stuff before the game even started and stuff.
These games would go for traditionally 2 and 3 days. These guys would play, and no timeouts, no water breaks. These guys would get out there and play. And men died playing this game. They call it the Little War. Traditionally, there were no rules regarding it. And looking at these men, these guys, these aren't bodybuilders, and these aren't guys with that what we call pretty muscle. This is that long, sinuous, get down to business. These are strong men playing this game. These are guys that can hurt you. A traditional dress for a ball game would have been your loincloth, or today a pair of shorts. And because they're not wearing shirts and pads, you can watch the reverberation through their body. You feel those impacts. And again, these guys, these are strong, in shape men. These guys would hurt you. This was not polite. There are some other photographs of ball sticks. You can see the netting that is traditionally made of sinew, and today it'll sinew. If it's a display stick, will be made out of strip leather. I've seen sticks, and I've held sticks that were strung with wire, and that in each course was wove, and that wire was snipped, so you'd have these barbs sticking out. And that was done in the late 1800s and into the 1930s, into this time period. Somebody had scored a point, and it was time for the center man to put the ball back up in the air. Or when they're getting up off the ground, those sticks, you drag them against your opponent to cut them. So that even though you're not dressed and you don't have any weapons, now those sticks become the weapons. The strings become the weapons. Very intense game. Very intense game.
And in later times, in the more recent past, in the last 100 or so years, being as how all the people that played it were all from the same community, it turned into a gambling game, and then where things were wagered, homes were wagered a long time ago in this game and stuff like that.
Apparently, they talked about how there was mountains of clothes. They were betting the shirts off their back. I made some lacrosse players mad one time because they talked about, oh yeah, we're aware of stickball. We play lacrosse. We know about stickball. Like, oh yeah, so you know that lacrosse is stickball for sissies. And these were big, strong boys. They didn't take kind to that. But I told them, okay, guys, take off your pads, throw out the rule books, and play the game. That's playing stickball.